The unassuming consultant Olivia Chen had seen her share of eccentric clients, but Marcus Beaumont was something else entirely. She found him in the corner of his own boardroom, hunched over a tablet while 20 executives debated the logistics of his upcoming corporate retreat, and someone addressed him directly. He would glance up with an almost apologetic smile and murmur something like, "Whatever you think is best." This was the man who had built Nexus Technologies from a garage startup into a $50 billion empire. Olivia watched him fidget with his sleeves and wondered if she'd made a mistake taking this contract. "Mr. Beaumont operates differently than most CEOs," explained Rebecca Torres, his chief of staff, after the meeting. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who seemed to run the company while Marcus floated through it like a ghost. "He prefers to delegate and observe rather than micromanage." Olivia nodded, though something felt off. In her 10 years of event planning, she'd worked with plenty of hands-off clients. But they usually had strong opinions about their vision. Marcus seemed genuinely indifferent to whether the retreat happened in Hawaii or Cleveland. Their first one-on-one meeting took place in his minimalist office overlooking downtown Seattle. Marcus sat across from her, shoulders slightly hunched, speaking so quietly she had to lean forward to hear him. "I trust your judgment completely," he said, when she presented 3 different theme options. "The employees work hard. They deserve something nice. But which direction appeals to you personally?" Olivia pressed. "This is your company culture. We're celebrating." Marcus shrugged, a gesture that seemed almost practiced. "I'm not really the visionary type. Rebecca handles most of the big picture thinking. I just ... try not to get in the way." It was such an odd thing for a billionaire to say that Olivia found herself studying his face for signs of false modesty. But his expression remained earnest, almost vulnerable. He reminded her of the gifted kids she'd known in college who downplayed their intelligence to avoid standing out. Over the following weeks, she coordinated with vendors and planned activities for 300 executives. Olivia began to notice small inconsistencies. During a catering tasting, Marcus quietly suggested they accommodate dietary restrictions she hadn't even thought to ask about. When the resort tried to upcharge them for premium amenities, he casually mentioned knowing the owner's daughter. Suddenly, the extras became complimentary. Most telling was how people reacted to him. The resort manager, a woman who bulldozed through conversations with everyone else, became almost deferential around Marcus. The head of security, a former military officer, built like a refrigerator, actually straightened his posture when Marcus entered the room. "He has that effect on people," Rebecca said when Olivia mentioned it. "Marcus may be quiet, but he's substantial." There was something in the way she said substantial that made Olivia think she meant something more than wealth or intelligence. But whenever she tried to probe deeper, Rebecca would change the subject with the skill of someone who'd had years of practice. The strangest moment came during their final planning session. Olivia was reviewing security protocols when Marcus suddenly looked up from his tablet, his usual vague expression replaced by something sharper. "The perimeter sensors," he said, his voice carrying an authority she hadn't heard before. "Sure, they're calibrated for the tree line. False alarms will disrupt the experience." For just that moment, he seemed like a different person, entirely focused, commanding, someone who thought several steps ahead. Then his phone buzzed, and the familiar, uncertain smile returned. "Sorry," he murmured. "I get paranoid about these things sometimes." As Olivia packed up her materials, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. Marcus Beaumont had built his fortune in cybersecurity, a field that required strategic thinking and calculated risk-taking. Yet he presented himself as passive, almost helpless. Walking to her car, she found herself wondering, was Marcus Beaumont really as harmless as he seemed? Or was there something more dangerous hiding behind those gentle eyes? Beneath the surface, the Cascade Resort sat nestled in the Washington mountains like a luxury fortress, all glass and timber against towering evergreens. Olivia arrived 3 days early to oversee final preparations, expecting the usual pre-event chaos of vendors scrambling to meet deadlines. Instead, she found an operation running with military precision. "Everything's ahead of schedule," reported Jake Morrison, the resort's event coordinator. though he seemed more puzzled than pleased. Your client's people have been ... thorough. Olivia walked the grounds, checking off items on her list. The catering staff had already completed their setup rehearsal. Security personnel moved through their positions like they'd been doing it for years, not days. Even the sound technicians were running diagnostics on equipment that wouldn't be used until tomorrow night. She found Marcus in the resort's business center, hunched over a laptop in his characteristic pose. But when she approached, she noticed. His screen showed what looked like building schematics rather than emails. "Just reviewing the fire evacuation routes," he said quickly, minimizing the window. "I worry about these old buildings sometimes." The building was less than 5 years old. That evening, Olivia joined Rebecca for dinner in the resort's restaurant. Over wine, she decided to test the waters. Marcus seems very detail-oriented for someone who claims not to be hands-on. She said carefully. Rebecca's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What makes you say that?" "Little things. The way he knew about the perimeter sensors. How he corrected the caterer about the kitchen's ventilation. Requirement something most people would never think about." "Marcus has always been observant," Rebecca said, but her tone had shifted from casual to cautious. "It's part of what made him successful." "Rebecca, can I ask you something?" Olivia leaned forward. "How long have you worked for him?" 15 years. Since before Nexus really took off. "And in all that time, has he always been so ... withdrawn?" Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in her glass. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. "Marcus learned early that being underestimated is a strategic advantage," she said finally, in his industry, the loudest voice. "In the room is usually the first target." Before Olivia could ask what she meant, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and immediately stood. "I need to take care of something. Enjoy your dinner." Left alone, Olivia found herself replaying the conversation. Rebecca's words felt like a warning wrapped in an explanation. She decided to take a walk around the resort to clear her head. The grounds were beautiful at night, lit by strategically placed lanterns that created pools of warm light along the walking paths. She was admiring the view of the lake when she heard voices from the terrace. Above Marcus's voice, but not the hesitant whisper she was used to. "The quarterly reports show exactly what we expected," he was saying, his tone crisp and authoritative. "They're hemorrhaging talent in their R&D division, and their latest security patches have more holes than Swiss cheese." So we move forward. With the acquisition, this was a voice she didn't recognize. Not yet. Let them struggle a little longer. Desperation makes people careless, and careless people make mistakes we can exploit. Olivia pressed herself against the wall, heart racing. This wasn't the uncertain man who apologized for having opinions about his own event. "What about the senators?" "Concerns," the unknown voice continued. "Senator Williams will vote however his largest donors tell him to vote. And after next week's fundraiser, will be his largest donor by a significant margin." There was a pause, then Marcus's voice again, but softer, now though still carrying that strange authority. "Power isn't about being the biggest predator in the water. It's about being the one nobody sees coming until it's too late." Footsteps approached the terrace edge. Olivia quickly moved away, her mind spinning. She'd stumbled onto what sounded like corporate espionage or political manipulation, possibly both. And Marcus Beaumont, the man who couldn't decide between chicken and salmon for dinner, was orchestrating it all. Back in her room, she stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every interaction with Marcus over the past month took on new meaning. His deference wasn't weakness, it was camouflaged. His quiet observations weren't signs of insecurity, they were intelligence gathering. She thought about Rebecca's warning about being underestimated as a strategic advantage, about the way security personnel straightened when Marcus walked by, about how smoothly everything was running, despite Marcus appearing to have no involvement in the planning. Tomorrow, 300 of the tech industry's most powerful executives would gather in this remote location. They would see Marcus Beaumont as harmless, irrelevant even. They would speak freely, make deals, reveal strategies, never imagining that the quiet man in the corner was listening to every word as dawn broke over the mountains. Olivia realized she was about to witness something unprecedented. The question, was whether she was prepared for what Marcus Beaumont might reveal when he finally stopped hiding. The perfect storm the morning of the retreat dawned crisp and clear, with executives arriving in a steady stream of black cars and helicopters. Olivia watched from the main lodge as titans of industry greeted each other with the casual confidence of people accustomed to controlling billions of dollars with their decisions. Marcus drifted through the crowd like a shadow, shaking hands with the enthusiasm of someone fulfilling a tedious obligation. When tech mogul David Kim arrived, CEO of Nexus's biggest competitor, Marcus actually seemed to shrink in his presence. "Marcus, good to see you," Kim said, with the condescending warmth reserved for perceived inferiors. "Still letting Rebecca run the show, I see?" "She's much better at these things than I am," Marcus replied, his voice barely audible over the crowd noise. Kim's laugh was sharp. "Well, we can't all be natural leaders, can we?" Olivia caught Rebecca's eye from across the room. For just a moment, she saw something that looked like satisfaction flicker across the chief of staff's face. The morning sessions proceeded smoothly. Panel discussions on emerging technologies, networking lunches, strategic planning workshops, everything designed to make the attendees feel they were part of something important while keeping them entertained. Olivia moved through the crowd, ensuring every detail was perfect, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching a performance whose true purpose remained hidden. Then, at precisely 2:47 p.m., everything changed. It started with Rebecca's phone buzzing during the Future of Cybersecurity panel. She glanced at it, and Olivia saw her face go pale. Rebecca quickly stepped outside, returning minutes later to whisper urgently in Marcus's ear. Marcus nodded once, his expression unchanged, and continued listening to the panel as if nothing had happened. 20 minutes later, phones started buzzing throughout the audience. First a few, then dozens. The moderator paused as executives began checking messages, their faces shifting from curiosity to concern to panic. "What's happening?" Someone called out. David Kim was staring at his phone, his earlier smugness replaced by something approaching terror. "There's been a massive data breach," he announced. "Multiple companies. Someone's released internal documents, financial records, strategic plans." The room erupted in chaos. Executives clustered around their phones, making frantic calls. Olivia heard fragments of panicked conversations, investigations, stock prices plummeting. Decades of carefully guarded secrets suddenly public. Through it all, Marcus sat quietly in his chair, seemingly oblivious to the storm breaking around him. Then Kim's voice cut through the noise, sharp with accusation. "This is you, isn't it, Beaumont? This has your fingerprints all over it." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Marcus, who looked up with that same apologetic expression he'd worn when choosing menu items. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I don't understand what you mean."
Don't
"Play dumb," Kim snarled. "Phoenix Protocol, Project Minerva, like the Blackwater contracts. Someone leaked documents from 7 different companies, but somehow Nexus Technologies isn't among them. What are the odds of that coincidence?" Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. She'd heard Marcus mention Phoenix Protocol during his phone conversation the night before. "David, I know you're upset," Marcus said, rising from his chair with his usual diffident manner. "But I would never." "Senator Williams just announced he's launching a congressional investigation," interrupted another executive. "He's calling for a complete audit of the cybersecurity industry. Our stock prices are in freefall, but somehow yours is trending upward." Rebecca moved closer to Marcus, her hand resting casually on her phone. Around the room, Olivia noticed other Nexus employees shifting position, creating subtle barriers between Marcus and the increasingly agitated crowd. "This is war," Kim said, his voice low and dangerous. "You've declared war on all of us, I think." "There's been a misunderstanding," Marcus replied, but something in his tone had changed. The apologetic uncertainty was still there, but underneath it, Olivia detected something else, something that sounded almost like amusement. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, casting the room in an eerie red glow. In the confusion, Olivia heard footsteps, hushed voices, the soft beeping of electronic devices. When the main lights returned 30 seconds later, The room's dynamic had shifted completely. Marcus stood in the center of the space, no longer hunched or apologetic. Security personnel, not the resort staff, but people she'd never seen before, had positioned themselves at every exit, and Marcus Beaumont was smiling, not the uncertain, self-deprecating smile she'd grown accustomed to, but something colder and infinitely more confident. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the silent room. "Gentlemen," he said, and for the first time since she'd met him, he sounded like someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation." Olivia realized she was holding her breath. Whatever was happening, she was about to witness the moment Marcus Beaumont stopped pretending to be harmless. The question was whether anyone in the room would survive. What came next? The reveal. Transformation was complete and terrifying. Marcus Beaumont stood at the center of the room like a different species, entirely shoulders back. Eyes sharp as cut glass, radiating the kind of authority that made powerful men instinctively step backward. "For 15 years, he began, his voice carrying easily through the silent room, "you've treated me like a useful idiot. The quiet little tech nerd who stumbled into success and was too timid to threaten anyone." He walked slowly around the perimeter of executives who had unconsciously formed a tight cluster in the room's center. Olivia pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. "David, you've been selling our client data to foreign governments for 3 years. Senator Williams, you've been taking bribes through your wife's consulting firm. Richard," he nodded to a silver-haired man near the back, "your company's been systematically underpaying federal contracts while overcharging municipalities." Each accusation landed like a physical blow. The named executives went pale, but no one dared to speak. "The beautiful thing about being underestimated," Marcus continued, "is that people tell you things. They make calls in front of you. They assume you're not smart enough to understand what you're hearing." We stopped in front of Kim, who was trembling with barely controlled rage. "You want to know about Phoenix Protocol? It's been running for 8 years. Every conversation you've had in my presence. Every email you've sent from devices using Nexus security software. Every private meeting in buildings where we provide cybersecurity consulting." The room erupted in furious whispers. But Marcus raised his hand, and the noise died instantly. "I've been collecting evidence of your crimes, your bribes, your industrial espionage, your tax evasion schemes, building detailed profiles of every corrupt deal, every illegal transaction, every federal law you violated while pretending to be pillars of the business community." Rebecca stepped forward holding a tablet. "The data released today represents less than 10% of what we've collected. Think of it as a demonstration." "This is extortion," Kim hissed. Marcus laughed, a sound Olivia had never heard from him before, rich and genuinely amused. "Extortion implies I want something from you," he said. "I don't. I'm done with all of you." He walked to the room's main screen and gestured. A complex organizational chart appeared, showing connections between dozens of companies, government officials, and foreign entities. "See, while you were busy treating me like a harmless eccentric, I was building something much more interesting than a cybersecurity company. I was building a network. Every contract Nexus signed gave us access to your systems. Every security consultation let us map your operations. Every casual conversation in my presence added another piece to the puzzle." The chart zoomed in on specific nodes, highlighting financial transfers, encrypted communications, and classified document exchanges. Senator Williams, who's calling for congressional investigations, he's my senator now, donated more to his campaigns in the past year than all of you combined. The federal prosecutors who will be reviewing this evidence, half of them are former Nexus employees who left for better opportunities in government. Senator Williams, who had been silent until now, found his voice. "Marcus, surely we can discuss." "Oh, we're past discussion," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "You're going to find that very few people will be returning your calls after today. Your boards of directors have already received preliminary reports about your activities. Your stock prices will continue falling. Your government contracts will be quietly canceled." He gestured again, and the screen showed real-time market data. Every company represented in the room was in free fall, except Nexus Technologies, which was climbing steadily upward. But here's the beautiful part. Marcus continued, his voice taking on an almost conversational tone. I'm not destroying you out of malice. I'm destroying you because it's profitable. Every company that collapses creates opportunities. Every government contract that gets canceled becomes available for rebidding. Every client who loses faith in their current cybersecurity provider needs a new one. Kim lunged forward, but two security guards intercepted him effortlessly. You're insane, Kim snarled. Can't just eliminate the entire industry? You're insane, Kim snarled. Can't just eliminate the entire industry. I'm not eliminating the industry, Marcus corrected. I'm consolidating it. Under ethical leadership, of course. The room fell into stunned silence as the full scope of his plan became clear. This wasn't revenge or a hostile takeover, it was systematic. Annihilation disguised as market forces. Olivia found herself thinking of every interaction she'd witnessed over the past month. Marcus's apparent weakness hadn't just been camouflaged, had been bait. He'd drawn his competitors close, made them comfortable, encouraged them to reveal their secrets, while believing he was too passive to use the information. The retreat ends now, Marcus announced. Transportation back to the airport has been arranged. I suggest you use the flight time to call your lawyers. You're going to need them. As the executives filed out under security escort, their earlier arrogance replaced by shell-shocked silence. Marcus caught Olivia's eye across the room. For a moment, his expression softened slightly, not back to his former uncertainty, but to something almost apologetic. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said quietly, approaching her. It wasn't part of the original plan. Olivia found her voice. What was the original plan? Marcus smiled, and this time it seemed genuine rather than calculated. To throw a perfectly lovely corporate retreat while accidentally destroying my competition. I really did want the employees to have something nice. Looking into his eyes, Olivia realized she'd been wrong about Marcus Beaumont from the very beginning. He wasn't a sheep in wolf's clothing, or a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was something far more dangerous, a wolf who had convinced everyone else they were the predators. Power unveiled. 3 weeks later, Olivia sat in Marcus's Seattle office, watching him review quarterly projections with the same quiet intensity she'd once mistaken for uncertainty. The transformation was permanent now. More hunched shoulders or apologetic smiles. He moved through his space like someone who had finally stopped pretending to be smaller than he was. Nexus acquired for companies this week, Rebecca reported. Settling into a chair across from his desk, 2 more are in negotiations. The federal contracts are being transferred as expected. Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. What about the congressional hearings? Senator Williams is very thorough. 17 executives have been indicted so far, with more expected. The media is calling it the largest corporate corruption scandal in decades. Olivia had watched the news coverage with fascination and horror. David Kim's company had collapsed entirely, its assets seized by federal marshals. Other executives were pleading guilty to avoid lengthy prison sentences. The tech industry was reshaping itself around the vacuum Marcus had created, and Nexus Technologies sat at the center of it all. The employees from the acquired companies are adapting well, Rebecca continued. Most seem relieved to be working. For an ethical organization, ethical, Olivia repeated, unable to keep the irony from her voice. Marcus looked up from his tablet, studying her with those sharp eyes that no longer bothered to hide their intelligence. You disapprove? He observed. I'm trying to understand, she said carefully. You've destroyed dozens of companies, ruined hundreds of careers, manipulated government officials, all while maintaining the ethical choice. The people whose careers were ruined were criminals, Marcus replied calmly.
Oh.
The companies I destroyed were built on corruption. The government officials I influenced were already for sale. I just offered a better price than their previous buyers. He set down his tablet and leaned back in his chair. 20 years ago, watched my father lose his cybersecurity company because he refused to pay bribes for government contracts. His competitors undercut him by using slave labor overseas and hiding income in tax havens. He died believing the system was broken, and there was nothing one honest person could do about it. Marcus's voice remained level, but Olivia caught something. Deeper underneath old pain, carefully controlled. I spent the first 5 years building Nexus legitimately, playing by their rules. And every year, I watched ethical companies fail while corrupt ones thrived. So I decided to change the rules. By becoming them? By becoming better than them. His smile was sharp. I never broke a single law. I never bribed anyone, never stole trade secrets, never engaged in the practices that made my competitors wealthy. I simply ... listened and remembered and waited. Rebecca stood to leave, but paused at the door. The Japanese delegation is here for the 4 o'clock meeting. They're very interested in our expansion proposals. After she left, Marcus moved to the window overlooking the Seattle skyline. Several buildings bore the logos of companies that hadn't existed a month ago, smaller firms that had emerged from the ashes of their corrupt predecessors, staffed by employees who'd been let go when their former employers collapsed. I offered you a permanent position, he said without turning around. Running our corporate events division, you haven't given me an answer. Olivia had been dreading this conversation. Working with Marcus during the retreat had been the most professionally challenging and personally terrifying experience of her career. She'd seen him dismantle an entire industry with surgical precision, all while maintaining the facade of a bumbling innocent. I keep thinking about that night I overheard your phone conversation, she said. You talked about power being most effective when nobody sees it coming. What happens when people start to see you clearly? Marcus turned back to her, and for the first time since the retreat, she saw genuine uncertainty in his expression. I don't know, he admitted. For 15 years, being underestimated was my greatest asset. Now, ... He gestured toward his desk, where dozens of interview requests from business magazines sat in neat piles. Now everyone wants to understand how the quiet little tech CEO brought down an industry. The mask is off. I can't put it back on. Does that scare you? Marcus considered the question seriously. Changes everything. The next phase will require different strategies, different allies, more visible forms of power. He walked back to his desk and picked up a folder marked with congressional seals. Senator Williams wants me to testify before a special committee on corporate governance. They're drafting new legislation to prevent the kind of corruption we exposed. I'll probably end up helping to write it. Olivia realized what he was telling her. Marcus wasn't retreating from the spotlight. He was stepping fully into it. Quiet Puppet Master was about to become a very public power broker. So what do you say, he asked. Ready to help build something unprecedented? Looking at Marcus Beaumont, really seeing him for perhaps the first time, Olivia understood that she stood at her own crossroads. She could walk away, return to planning harmless corporate events for harmless clients, or she could stay and help shape whatever came next in the empire of a man who had just proven that patience and perception could topple giants. The question wasn't whether Marcus's methods were ethical. The question was whether the world he was building would be better than the one he'd destroyed. I want full transparency, she said finally. No more performances. If I'm working for you, I work for the real you. Marcus's smile was genuine, perhaps. The first truly honest expression she'd seen from him. Deal, he said. Though I should warn you, the real me is considerably more ambitious than the version you met at that networking brunch. As Olivia shook his hand, she wondered if she'd just made the smartest decision of her career, or signed up to help a brilliant predator reshape the world in his own image. Either way, she had a feeling it was going to be an extraordinary ride.